Tony, you watched the Invisible Touch footage in the studio. What were the highlights for you?
Well, I think to see the full version of Tonight was probably one of the most interesting things to see, really, because we only played it like that for that one tour. We played the first part lots of times and the end part, but not the middle, which is probably the best bit of it. So that was high. And the usual ones, I suppose, really Domino and Home by the Sea, I think, came across pretty well.
And how did those highlights compare with playing the concert?
I don't know, really. I mean, the Tonight solo is actually a very difficult thing to play because it involved setting up the emulator in a very strange way, so the white notes were strings and the black notes were oboes and stuff. And so it was one I really had to keep my head. If I lost it for a moment, I was gone, you know.
So explain that a bit. So when you're playing a solo, your white notes are playing a different instrument.
That's right, and they're not in the same key. So the white notes were pretty much in the right key, I think, and the black notes, I just had them so that they played the notes in between. So if you watch my hands on it, it's kind of, if you think I'm probably just miming or something, but actually I'm playing it. It's just that the way we set it up, because obviously an emulator you could set it up so that any note could be any album note, if you like. You don't think of it in the musical terms. You mustn't. That's the other thing. You mustn't think of it like you're playing the notes, because then you go mad. You just got to keep your hands going where you know they should go, and almost don't listen to what you're playing.
Can you tell me anything else about your keyboard setup from this time? What were your main keyboards?
There was probably an E3, was it? That was on top of the CP70. And there was the synclavier, which I think I was actually using the real instrument at that point rather than sort of samples from it. And behind me, I think, was a Prophet 10 with a ARP Quadra on top. I think because Mama relied on the Quadra to kind of extent to that pulsing beat all the way through was played like that. Because this is obviously pre kind of sort of sequence things and everything, so there were other ways of doing all these things.
Do you have any particular memories of this tour in general? It was a very big tour, wasn't it?
It was our first attempt at doing sort of lots of open airs one after the other. I just remember we were doing it in Europe, most of it, and it was the European part, at least, it rained a lot. I just got memories of places, I think it must have been Madrid or something, it was just pouring down.
And what was a day on the road like?
Well, on that particular, when you're doing the open airs, normally, because it takes quite a long time to get from place to place, so you tend to have slightly more time between shows, I suppose. So there's a lot of the travelling, you're flying or you're driving or you're whatever, and then sound check tended to be very early because you had to let the people in. It took a long time for them to get in, so you were normally stuck at the place after that. You couldn't go back to a hotel or anything because you can get back in through the crowd. You know, that's always a disadvantage of those things. You used to have a long period of time, so during the day really I used to play a lot of ping pong actually.
Would that sort of relay nerves, or would you be nervous before a concert like that?
Particularly not over nervous. I get a bit nervous, I suppose. The only thing I was really nervous about was breakdowns, I think, more than anything else. So in the earlier days of the group, it was to worry me more. But by that stage, the stuff was fairly reliable. But that's the thing you couldn't fight. I mean, there were a few key moments in the set where you knew there was a difficult bit coming up. Of course, the most difficult bit in this set was in the cage, which you don't actually see on this video. But there are little moments when and I said that little moment like in Tonight, where you've got to keep your head. Some of the things that are difficult to play are not actually things that sound very difficult, and you just can't lose it at that point. Sometimes if you make a mistake in certain songs, it's very apparent.
Yeah, you touched upon the fact there's no medley on this DVD. Could you explain to people why that is?
I think mainly because we had to have a moment in the show to change all the cameras and everything, particularly, well, you always have this in every live show you do, but particularly in this, because I think there was a limited number of these high-definition cameras that you used for this show and everything. I think the other feeling was that we'd already had the In the Cage medley on the previous Three Sides Live tour video, and that it was probably therefore going to be too repetitive. I mean, we'd done In the Cage obviously ever since The Lamb.
And there is Los Endos, which I thought was
Los Endos, yeah, Los Endos was great. Los Endos was fun, really. It was it worked very well as a closing piece, and sort of solved that problem for us for years until we sort of finally decided we couldn't do it any longer. And the version on that's pretty good, I think. Really, it was always quite. I mean, it's a kind of funny piece of music, really, because if you've never heard it, all the bits it came from, the volcano and squonk and everything, it doesn't. I don't know how well it works on its own, because a lot of people probably never heard that. People who didn't sort of know us very well would come and sort of at Invisible Touch, and they'd come and they'd see this, and this piece that sort of went through all these different changes. But it was always quite exciting.
That's fine. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Davis.
Okay.